In the very start of the interview, I thought about how I want to ask the questions and which questions I should ask. And then I remembered a few days ago, I thinking about being myself more in any kind of situations. To really be true to myself and ask what I find interesting. I did the things that I felt aligned with, and I felt like we're aligning with what I believe in, to be myself more. I learned some really great things, and I learned what actually meditation means. So I also learned that yoga is really the conductor for all these spiritual and self-development things. It's one conductor, it's one tool. Yeah, I don't use it myself that much, but I know a few people who have done incredible growth and incredible change. They have gone through incredible things and used this tool, yoga, as a tool to come to where they came, and it's amazing.
Do you want me to tell you a little bit about myself?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so I was born in Brazil. That's where my family's from. And I left Brazil when I was 2 years old, and I moved to New York with my family, so we immigrated. And I lived in the New York area my whole life, pretty much. And I went to school there, went to university there. And when I got out of the university, I really wanted to connect with people and find a way to tell stories. So I started working in television production, and I worked in New York and LA on all different types of shows. And then eventually ended up working with talent in reality TV. But after about 8 years or so of having the career, it's very intense, and living in New York is very intense, I started to feel like there was something missing. I was always very drawn to mysticism and spirituality, and always doing kind of my own curious learning about it. But I really felt that I was hitting a point in my career that I was going to get burned out. So I started to look for meditation. I knew that I had to do something that was going to help my mind get really strong. So I found my first yoga teacher, and not really going to yoga. I had done yoga a little bit for the physical, but I was like, no, I need to do something that's a little bit more spiritual. And so I found a Kundalini yoga teacher that I really liked. And the Kundalini practice is very intense. It's a lot of breathing and these kriyas, which are like purification exercises. So they like really push you with this breath. And what it does is it brings the energy all up to the brain. So it gives you this like moment of expanded consciousness and an awareness. So I did that for a little bit, and it was helping, but then I was still looking for more. And I ended up finding the teacher that would become my first like big teacher in my life, and started just diving into the practice. I was working still full time in my old job, but doing yoga like in the morning at 6 a.m. and then going back in the evening and every day, and just researching more things about yoga, reading books. And there was something about moving the body and breathing at the same time that was giving me like a little bit of space in my brain and a little bit of separation from like the identity that I had created with my career. And for the first time, I started to consider that maybe I wanted to have a different life. And this was something I always wanted, but I was a little too afraid to kind of say it out loud or take the steps. And then my first teacher invited me to do a yoga teacher training. And I remember saying like, no, this is not for me. I have a job. I work in TV. I'm very busy. I just do yoga because it's fun. I like to do it as a hobby. And she insisted. She was like, no, I think you really should do this training because you're very interested. So she gave me the training for free. And it was like, how can I say no to that? And it changed my life, because for the first time, I always thought that the only thing I could really do was work in TV, that I could just be a producer, that I could just interview people and chase stories. And then when I taught my first yoga class, like just to my peers during my training, it was the first time that I was like, I could do something else. There could be another option for me. So that was the best thing. At the time, it seemed like the worst thing because my entire life started to unravel because all I could think about was, oh no, how do I leave my TV job and move into teaching yoga? There's like, they couldn't be more different, you know?
Was there like specific moment where it hit you? Was it that moment where you was teaching your peers?
Yeah, I think like I remember when I taught my first class, I was like, oh no, like I can't just go back to work tomorrow and pretend like everything is the same, because it wasn't. And I was always a freelancer, so I was always working on different projects. And I remember just having no desire or motivation to do any projects anymore. And all I wanted to do was teach yoga, but you don't really make a lot of money teaching yoga. And I lived in New York, and I had an apartment and a car, and you know, like I had to still live my life. But for a while I was doing both. I was like teaching yoga at 6 a.m. and then going on a shoot, and then coming back and teaching yoga at 8 o'clock at night, and, you know, teaching on the weekends, and always trying to sneak in my yoga life. So I had like this TV life, and then I had my yoga life, and the two lives they were clashing. And it came to a point that I was exhausted. I was like, I was taking my holidays to run yoga retreats. So I would take a holiday from work to go on a yoga retreat or run a yoga retreat. And then in 2015, I came to Europe to run a retreat and to travel for a little bit. I was already like trying to find an escape from my TV life and my life in New York. And I met through a friend, I interviewed a man who became my husband, and he was just traveling with no agenda, just kind of traveling. He had gone to Everest Base Camp, and he had just done like some adventures around the world. And he had this idea, he was running retreats for people to do adventures. So he was bringing people to different places in the world that he was going to, and he was doing adventures with them, and then they would do some sort of service work. So I interviewed him for a project, and then we kind of started building a relationship. And I remember telling him, yeah, I'm also bringing people on retreats, but I have another job full time. And he was like, I don't get it. Like, doesn't make sense. So that that fall, I ended up coming to Europe, and I ended up meeting him. He was here in Portugal. We ended up meeting face to face, but he's actually from the same place that I'm from.
Brazil.
No, he's Portuguese American, but he was from the same place. He had just been traveling.
All right.
So I ended up meeting him here in Portugal, and in our time that we spent together, he said to me, I don't understand, if you want to teach yoga and you want to travel, why are you having your TV job? It was like very simple.
Yeah.
And I was like, because I have to pay my bills and I have to be an adult. But for him, it was like very simple, like, that doesn't make sense. If you're doing one thing, you shouldn't be doing the other thing. If this is where you want to go, why are you doing something else? So I was here in Lisbon, I was in Portugal, and I never went back to working in TV. I sent an email. I was supposed to start a new project on Monday, and I sent an email and I said, I'm sorry, I can't do this project. You have to find somebody else. And then I never took another TV job again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to teach yoga full time. I'm going to make this work. And then right away, when I was back home, I realized in order for me to make this work, I need to leave. I need to completely leave my life. I can't stay where I am and try to fit a new reality into this.
Yeah.
I have to get a whole new setup. So in December of 2015, I packed a backpack, my yoga mat, and I left the US, and I went to meet this guy in Morocco. He offered me an opportunity to teach yoga on a trip that he was doing. He's like, I never did yoga with my retreats. Maybe it works. Maybe it's a good thing. Do you want to come teach yoga to these people? And I was like, sure. And I went. I had very little money, no agenda of like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I was just going for the adventure. And I never went back. Well, I went back, but I never moved back. So we ended up getting married, and I was able to, in that time, really, it's like I really committed to myself, like what I really wanted to do. And because I was so focused and committed, like I was like, I'm going to make this work. I want it so bad. I'm going to make it work. That I did. You know, I've been able to teach yoga in many places all over the world. I've run retreats, over 20 retreats to all different places all over the world, and really just connect with a lot of people. And that was the whole reason of everything I ever wanted to do, is like connect and share transformational experiences with people. And even when I worked in TV, those were the most inspiring moments, when somebody had like a story that was like, oh my God, this is an amazing story. Your story's changing people's lives. So I always see it as like, I'm still kind of it's still the same direction. It's just a different way. So now I live in Lisbon. I've been living here for 4 years. We traveled all over the world for like 5 years, me and my husband. We lived in South America, in Asia. We really had like a big adventure for a long time, traveling. And then we came here, and I started teaching yoga here in the studios, and now we have a retreat space in Sintra. So we have like another perspective of it, but it's still the same mission, is like getting people together and everybody sharing their stories, because everybody has an amazing story to share. And with that story, you can inspire other people. And that's the transformation starts there, when you can connect and learn about different people. So that's my story.
That's very interesting. For me personally, it was also a bit inspiring. Yeah. I mean, I never really imagined. Okay, I'm just gonna take a pause here. Wait. Now, I found it really interesting how first you thought that the TV interviewing was like the one thing you wouldn't wanted to do, to connect with people there and chase these stories. But then in the end, found out that like this other thing is now like your passion. Do you think it was always your actual thing that you really wanted?
I don't know. I think everybody's life has a natural rhythm. And I wouldn't be able to be here if I didn't have all of the years that I spent working in New York and TV. It was amazing. It was hard. But I learned so much. I got to travel. I got to like see some really amazing things that I would never have imagined. So I think it was a very necessary part of my development, because it also showed me, okay, I've seen all of this, but what do I really want? And am I just chasing the next story and the next story and the next story, and not really chasing my own story? And maybe I'm, and I was from an area and a way of living that it was always like more, the next. And when I started to do yoga, it was more of like, hold on, what's really important? I'm gonna just work and burn myself out for what? For what? What's the big picture? And I think that I needed to have that so that I can see that, oh, maybe there's another way. If I didn't have that, I would never even have a comparison.
So the yoga gave you like this clearance that you could really find out what you actually wanted, but it's not necessarily this yoga, just that it's like this kind of conductor or facilitator that makes it possible.
Yeah, the yoga was just a doorway. It was just like an opening, because I think now the mission of my life, or if I think about what my big objective in my life is just to experience, to really allow myself the luxury of experiencing all the parts of life without needing to wait for a holiday or needing to, when I work so hard can I get there. I think that's very limiting for life. I think, and also to be very present with the life that I have, not waiting for the next thing. And yoga opened the door to show me that, like, okay, this is just one tool. It just helps me breathe better. It helps me focus, or reminds me that I can focus. And I think the other big thing that yoga did for me was it gave me an option. I think when people get older, we think, I'm too old for that now. I decided I have to do this, so I'm going to have to do it for the rest of my life. We can change our minds whenever we want.
Yeah.
And I needed to be reminded that, like, it's okay to change my mind. I really loved TV, but then I started to love yoga more. And that's okay. And then maybe in 10 years, there'll be something else that I love more. That's okay. It's just remembering that life is about evolving and letting yourself be exactly where you are in that moment. And you don't have to be where you were 10 years ago. And you don't have to worry about where you're going to be in 10 years from now. You can just, right now, this works for me.
It didn't just happen automatically with like no effort, but you came to this realization and came to this change, right?
No, it was brutal.
So, yeah.
It was brutal. So it seems like a really nice story, but the reality is that for many years, my whole life was designed in a certain way. I was an immigrant child of a family that sacrificed a lot for me to be the first one to graduate from university. And, you know, I had this career that people thought was like, oh my God, how cool. So I had an identity that was wrapped up in that. So when I decided to step away from that identity, I had a really hard time because I felt responsible. I felt like, oh no. And, you know, I don't think we are encouraged enough to fail. So there's this big fear of like, so if I fail, instead of being like, okay, if I fail, so what? It was like, oh no, my life will be over.
Yeah.
So it was very, very, very scary. It was very scary. And then when I did, you know, even when I was out in the world traveling and everyone's like, oh, you're living this life, it's difficult. I had very little money. You know, you're living like as a backpacker, you know, you're like trying to make your money stretch. You don't really know what your next move is. You're kind of waiting. And it gives you a lot of anxiety and it gives you a lot of doubt. So the practices and like really trusting my practices and really remembering like, no, there's something else is what I had to really rely on, because if not, I would have gone back. I would have been scared. I would have been, okay, it's not working. I got to go. But I was like, a little more. I have a little more. And every time I committed to myself, I got like another sign that like, no, it's working. Keep going. And it's like a big process of unraveling and making space for something else to come in. Because you can't, you know, it's like I can't live my old life.
Yeah, can you explain that a bit further? What do you mean with this unraveling?
I had to really allow myself to everything I thought I was or I was supposed to be, let it just not be anymore. Like I was almost like if there was like a thread wrapped around me of like, and I was like pulling on it, and slowly as it was like coming apart, I was given more freedom to try something else, to try it a different way, to say no to something that normally I would say yes to, or to say yes to something I would say no to before, you know? And then I think I was getting a little closer to who I was more aligned with. because I think I was still trying to live a life that wasn't working for me anymore. So I was like forcing myself to stay in New York, forcing myself to stay in TV when really I just wanted to go.
When you were coming back from Portugal, going back to the US, did you stay there a long time or no?
I got back from my trip to Europe in October, and then in 2 months I left. It was like I couldn't.
Yeah.
The minute I came back, it was like everything was like I was in a like nobody understood me. I was like no, and everybody's like, "Are you crazy?" Like, and I'm like, maybe, but I have to go find out. I have to go see what else is there for me, because I can always come back. You know, there was this feeling of like, well, if it doesn't work, at least I can come back. But if I never go, I'll never know.
That's like a really good base, but I really know that the environment that you're in, it's like we need to go out of that to change. Like this environment just kind of, it's a mold which keeps you in a specific form. And
that was a lot of it too. I couldn't create a new reality if my foundation was still the same place, the same structure. I needed to completely pick myself up and start a new reality. And, you know, that meant leaving my friends and leaving my family and leaving what I thought was secure.
Are you still friends with some of the people there?
Yeah, a lot. Like, you know, there was a lot of like, some people just kind of, it was harder to stay in touch, but a lot of my root close friends, because they, even if they didn't understand, they were like, okay, I guess you have to do this. And some people weren't really, I think they were more worried for me, or worried about what that means. Like, okay, if you're going, what does that mean? Like, this is not normal. People don't do this. And then, but other people were just like, okay, well, we're here. So whenever you come visit, we're here. So it's actually, it's really nice, because then the relationships are very full, because when I go visit them, we spend time together, and it's very real and it's very full. And a lot of people came and visited me, and they traveled with me, and we had a different adventure together. It made our friendships different. It made our friendships stronger, because we were now sharing moments, not where we were from, but like all over the world in different ways. So it was it made everything quite special.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, sometimes I ask myself if I need to like leave this place and to really begin to change and to align myself more. Do I need to like leave my friends behind? But it's nice to hear that I don't.
Yeah, and I think maybe for a minute it's like, you know, I think all relationships, they go like this, right? We kind of we go wide away, and then we come really close, and then we come back, and that's a normal part of life. We're just always expanding and contracting. And our relationships with everything should be that way, not just with our parents or our friends or our partners, but even in relationships with things like, you know, sometimes I realize I'm really devoted to a certain part of my practice. I'm really connected to it. And sometimes I'm like, no, I want to do something a little different. And then, so even my practice is always doing this.
Yeah, okay.
Because if not, we get rigid. And I think the point of things like yoga, or expanding our awareness, or expanding our understanding of ourselves, is that we give ourselves the permission to not be rigid. We have flexibility, we have adaptability. We're open, like really open. So you're like, okay, I know what I like and I know what I don't like, but I'll try that if maybe I'm curious. You know, we stay curious, and then we can always be pulsing a little more.
I like that. I like to imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of nature, right? That's how nature is. It doesn't stay the same. Every single day, this place is changing. Every single day, the earth is constantly pulsing, 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 pulsing. And we are part of it. We should be doing the same. So if we live our lives in one way only, then we're not really doing what the humans are supposed to be doing, which is having like a full experience, feeling everything. You know, we get to do what some of the animals can't do, which is we get to feel and remember and have memories and all of that. So why not?
What do you think is like one of the biggest obstacles to like embrace that belief, and like really connect yourself to it? So because I think maybe it's like, even if you know it and you heard it from a lot of people, like you believe them, but you're still wired to other beliefs.
I think fear, right? But like fear really comes down to, so why do people not do that? Why do people not take chances? Or why do people stay in the same job even if they're unhappy? Or why do people stay in the same place even if they feel like in their gut that they want to go do, like, you know, you meet a lot of people and they'll say, oh, one day, oh, that's my dream. And the reason they don't do it is because doing something scary or difficult, there's a big cost. There's a big payoff, but there's a big cost. And it's like, this goes back to this concept of failure. Well, if I fail, or if I'm out of my comfort zone, what will I do if I need help? Who will I rely on? And if I fail, what does that mean about me? Will people reject me? So we don't sometimes, I think, take chances, and we keep ourselves in whatever is safe, because if we take too many chances and we fail, maybe that makes us think that we will be rejected, or we won't be accepted by people that we love. We'll fail them. We'll disappoint them. And I think all of those things are things that we need to kind of start breaking down. Like, there's no taking a chance and trying something or being open to something. What's the worst that can happen? You know? But then it also comes to having support. You know, having like people that really tell you, like, no matter what, I'm here for you. Go do your thing. When you have a little bit of that, you feel a little less fearless, a little less, because you're like, okay, if it really gets tough, I know my support system, my community, my friends, they're right there if I need them. And they don't have to be with me on this adventure, but I know that if I need them, they've got me, and I've got myself. I think that's the biggest thing. We need to start really remembering that we can hold ourselves. We could take care of ourselves. So we give ourselves a little more freedom. We take more ownership of, like, I got this.
Yeah, that's great to know. Like, I mean, some people first need to learn it. First you need to learn it, but you can take care of yourself, and when you know it, because you have done it. And yeah, sometimes I think I'm not the only one. Like, we think we need some requirements. Like, we already need to be authentic or so, but it's been really bad. You first need to learn it, and first you're gonna suck, and you can continue to suck in some way. Like, you're gonna continue to like, somehow it seems from your past self is probably gonna think, oh, that's so much more dangerous, like it's or risky, and would be like you will feel much more fear or so. But when you're continuing, just recently I started to try to degrade that belief that it's gonna get easier, but really it's gonna stay the same. Like it's always gonna be hard.
The circumstances just change.
And maybe you still fear the demons like the same way. It's just maybe that's for like that you're continuing to advance on.
Yeah, I think for me, I remember having a moment before I left the US and I was thinking, so I either leave now with no money. I wasn't prepared. It's never the right time. So I was like, I either leave now and I just go because I have this impulse inside of me, or I stay here and then another year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years goes by and I could potentially wake up and look around at my life and be like, what am I doing? So why not just find out sooner? Because I can go on an adventure and I could have gone and in 2 months I could have been like, what am I doing? This is crazy. Let me go back.
But you could also have like and gone back and because it was too much. I mean,
yeah, it was a lot. There was moments that I was like, there's no way. What am I doing?
Can you tell me one of those moments?
I mean, imagine being in a middle, we at one point we were living in Nicaragua in Central America, and we lived on a remote beach. Sometimes we had no Wi-Fi for days, So when you're all of a sudden you have all this free time that you never had before, but you feel almost paralyzed because you have no purpose. So I was so used for so many years of having like tasks and work, and I have to complete these, deadlines and this and this. And all of a sudden I had nothing. And all of the fantasy that you get in your head about like, oh, I'm going to do yoga every day. I'm going to walk on the beach. I'm going to read all these books that I have been wanting to read. Nothing happens. Because actually, when you're just with yourself, there's no distractions. You can't actually do anything. Like for the first time, you're almost like, this is too much. I need a distraction. I need the Wi-Fi. I need to get out of here. And it was those moments that I went from one extreme to the other, being in a city, very stimulated to like, what am I doing here? Okay, what do I really want? Because it's not that and it's not this. So what do I really want? What's gonna make me feel like I wanna wake up every day and do something? So I think what we need to have purpose. And that doesn't mean that you have to be like doing a big mission of any kind, but it's just my purpose is that there's somebody that relies on me to help them get food, whatever. It can be something very small. My purpose is to water these plants, because if I don't water them, they're not going to grow. And I was seeking to redefine my purpose a little bit. So I had all this space, and then it really made me think, what can I do with my life? What do I want to do with my life? And I realized the only thing I could do with my life is really learn about myself. And in doing that, everything else kind of happens. So for me, I love learning, right? So that's why I loved yoga, because there's so much to learn. Being a student, getting to just get new information, being around people that had had interesting lives. And so I wasn't really needing to get to any big goal. It was more like, I just want to learn. I just want to learn. And then I think that anybody naturally, when you learn something and you really have integrated it into your life and it makes a difference, all you want to do is share that. So you naturally start sharing what you're learning in any way, in your relationships, in your job, in your life. So I think that was for me a big point where I was like completely removed from everybody. I mean, we would have to take a bus for 2 hours to go to the supermarket and get groceries. Like, that's how far we were. So the whole week was like, okay, what day are we going to get food? Because this is the day we have to go. And it was such a different existence, but also really a reminder that, like, okay, I don't have to do that, and I don't have to do that. I can create a new reality. What's the reality that works best for me? But it was painful. It was painful.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's right now exactly like that. I have 100% free time. I can do whatever I want. And it's, yeah, it feels weird. It's a bit scary, and you don't really know what you are going to do. And like, even if you think that you have a purpose, is it really true?
Right.
Like, and I mean, in the end, probably it doesn't matter if it's like true purpose. I don't know. If you're gonna find out at some point that you are going to have a different purpose, that's great. But you don't need to find out right now if the purpose that you're going after is the one that you want to go after. So, no.
I think it comes back to being really present, because you can have a ton of free time and be really okay with it and be like, I'm just going to sit here and watch these trees move. Or you can have all the free time in the world and never really be able to enjoy it because you're just thinking about all the other things you have to do. And you're not there in that moment.
You mean that you want to
That you want to do, and you're just idealizing another scenario. But it's like, how much of our lives do we spend idealizing something that isn't real, and we're not really where we want to be, where we are, which is at some point we wanted to be there too. At some point we were idealizing this moment. So that's one of the practices I think that yoga is really amazing with, is like coming back to the truth, the presence. And, you know, because we use the breath in yoga, it's like the only thing that's happening right now is that you're taking an inhale and now you're taking an exhale. This is the truth. Nothing that happened before or after is true because it doesn't exist right now.
Yeah.
This is what exists. So you remember that, like, okay, there was a moment in my life that I was fantasizing about this moment. And here I am, and I'm thinking about another moment. So let me bring myself back to here. And that's like the meditation practice, right? It's not like having no thoughts. It's being really clear about where you are. And then you can see yourself as you are in that moment, not how you were or how you one day want to be, but like, oh, this is how I am today. Oh, today I'm happier. Today I'm a little more sad. Today I have anxiety. Today I'm a little lazy. Today, you know, and you just give yourself, okay, that's okay, because I'm just like this right now. Maybe in 5 hours I'll be different. Maybe and we will be, because again, everything is constantly pulsing and moving. So I think it's that, oh, it's not that bad. It's going to change. It's not that bad. The only thing I have to worry about is right now. The only thing I really can worry about, I really can make any change on or any impact in, is right now. And when we start to even put a little bit of that thinking into our lives every day, I think it makes us have a sweeter experience of life, because we are just really aware of every moment, every conversation, every interaction, everything becomes a gift. Everything becomes like very, you know, a sunset, you pass somebody on the street, you see something and you really see it. You eat something, you really eat it. You savor it.
Yeah, I think I understand now what it means to be in a meditative state. You can be in a meditative state while you do anything. You just need to be present. So like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for a long time I was wondering what does it actually mean to meditate, and that's why I didn't do it. Like, yeah, sometimes I was meditating, but mostly because somebody else was too.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the concept of meditation, which is what I originally started doing with yoga, is I needed a break from myself, but it wasn't from myself.
Mm-hmm.
I needed all the other things to stop so that I can be with myself. But really what that meant was I needed to just not be in the future or in the past. I needed to just be right there in that moment. And then in that moment, I could be like, well, how do I feel right now? How am I doing right now? No matter what, if I was cooking or walking or practicing or being still, what's happening right now? Can I hear the sounds? Can I feel the sensations? Just taking like that little pause. And then you practice taking that pause, and you practice taking that pause. And then that pause, you can translate that into even when you're working. You know, it's like with people when they get in like a flow state, right? They're just going because they're only where they are. They're not anywhere else. So I think that's what we're all kind of, we get glimpses of that in our lives, like little moments. And I think that that's one of the things that would bring people a little bit less fear, is if they became a little bit more like, okay, it doesn't matter what's the bad thing that could happen. This is right now. This is happening. This is real. So I'm going to take this realness and I'm just going to carry it into the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And then that fear, it's not real. It's just a concept. It's just a construct. And
what if you're feeling anxious right now, and that's the truth, like the present?
Then you just be anxious.
Yeah.
You know, I have a really amazing teacher, a Tantra teacher, and in Tantra, this concept is like, okay, just be with what you are. It's not about changing it or trying to make it be not that. The more we can embrace exactly what is, the less it becomes powerful over us. It becomes just a part of us, right? So, okay, I'm really anxious. I'm really scared. I'm going to be scared. And then maybe after 5 minutes, I'm not so scared anymore. Or, oh, I'm more scared. And then you watch all the fluctuations of emotions. You watch them change, and you become really aware that nothing stays the same. Everything does change. And because we know that everything will change, the trees change their colors and the leaves change, we change. Okay, so this thing that right now seems like it's so big, it's not going to be so big later because it's going to change.
What's like really amazing, I mean, in a sense it's amazing and awful, but like when in truth, if you would focus on that, how you're feeling, but you're suppressing it, and that's when it kind of sinks deeper and stays. And from this one book I read starting this year was it's called Letting Go, and that book explained how to let go, and it's really similar to what you just said, to focus on that and just to feel it, and like you said, after 3 minutes, like 5 minutes, maybe it's not that much anymore, because it does change. And that's what the book said. And yeah, I just find it interesting to hear that again, that Basically, this is meditation.
I think this is meditation, this is yoga, this is expanded consciousness, this is presence, this is Taoism, you know. And the Taoists weren't really focused on, you know, they were watching nature, and a lot of shamans and the shamanic practice is all about nature, because when you're in nature, or when you're really connected to nature, you watch everything change. You watch the seasons go, the leaves fall from the trees, the animals hibernate, and then everything comes back to life, and then everything dies again, and then everything comes back to life. Even the ocean, the waves are just going, but they're not the same any single time. Every single wave is different. So even in the same ocean that you're watching, every single wave coming through is going to be different. It's going to break in a different place. So we can use that, everything that's around us, to really remember, like, oh, everything is changing all the time. And it will always be that way. As much as I think I have control and I can hold,
but
we can't hold anything. That's fake.
Yeah. It's sometimes like scary. At the same time, you can explain, like, look, I have control, and at the same time you can argue, no, you don't.
Yeah. But we get to play. I think this is like the coolest thing about being a human. We get to live in this very real world, right? This material world that has obligations and deadlines and schedules and taxes, you know, all these things. And then we also still get to look around and be like, oh my God, but I'm on a pulsing blue orb in the middle of the universe, surrounded by all other life forms other than myself. I am only this small little thing because some of these trees have been living longer than I will ever live. And so my existence is so small. And we get to have that duality where we can see both of it, like, whoa, I'm part of this, but I also get to have a different experience. Because the tree doesn't care if it's paying taxes or if it's got a schedule, but like humans, we do, right? So we get to play, and we can, if we see it as like a play, a game.
Well, how do you see it as a play or as a game?
Not taking it so seriously. And remembering that, like, everything we're doing is, yeah, we have a form that we've taken as a like, you know, this is my body, and I'm a woman, and I'm 41 years old, and I'm Brazilian, but I'm American, and now I live in Portugal, right? I have all these forms, but really, what I really am is just a collection of atoms and a collection of energy, similar to that tree or to the flower here, where I was just put together in this form. So I'm just another representation of nature in a different form. And that when I'm not here anymore, when I don't exist, the world will keep going. So everything that I think is so serious and so intense, after 80, 90 years for some people, doesn't exist anymore. So we should focus on the things that are small sometimes, not just the things that seem so big, but like the small things, like watching a sunset, a conversation with somebody, feeling connected, simple pleasures. Because if we just focus on the big pleasures, we let the other stuff that's really sweet about life slip past us. And if we can't just have one without the other, we get to, we have to see it as a privilege. As a human, like, what a privilege that I get to go to a job, and like my brain expands when I learn new things. And I get to create like a set of skills, and I get to play instruments, and sing or dance or paint or learn how to build something. And then I also get to just do nothing and stare at the trees. So, I don't know. I think for me, the way to see it as a play is remembering that it all ends the same for everybody. And that's not like the most like glamorous, but it's like we have such a short amount of time in the grand scheme of life. Like I said, the trees are older than I'll ever be. So why not make every day really, really full, really sweet?
Well, how do you think about like when you want to make it every day like really full and sweet? Do you think that it's also necessary to have this bitterness and in there?
It will come because it's the yin and the yang. Everything coexists in opposites and duality, right? There's light and dark, there's the sun and the moon. But just embracing that, like, okay, maybe you have a day where you wake up and you get to go on a really nice walk and you get to have a moment of sweetness. And then maybe that day doesn't end so sweet. Something happens that is more mentally or emotionally challenging. But you've gotten to experience like a full range of that and seeing it as like, okay, this is the duality of life. This is these two ends of the spectrum.
Also, is it okay if I say something? Like people say like we are one.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't believe it's not true. It's just like I cannot really live as one with like whole existence. But yeah, basically we are one, though from what I see, there's this duality and just embracing that right now, in the present moment, there's duality. Maybe I will have some short moments where I feel like I'm connected with a whole existence, but the duality is really the thing that's true right now. Maybe at some other point after not existing anymore, there's unity. I don't know, but it's just
Well, I mean, from the lineage of yoga that I teach and practice, it's this idea of non-dualism, right? So duality is almost like an illusion, the duality of separateness. And by that, it means like I come from the same existence that everything else in the world comes from. So everything comes from the same place. And as humans, if we take that, and this is my interpretation, that humans, we want all the same things, no matter who you are. We have the same basic primal needs. And we're living in a world where we believe that we have that what somebody in another continent wants is different than what I want. And it's like, no, we want the same things. We want to be seen and heard and understood. And we want to be safe. And we want to be loved and to love somebody else and to love others. That's what it comes down to. It's all anybody wants. That's it. All of the other things are just temporary. So that's this illusion that we have that we're different from anybody, or that I'm so different from those people, I could never understand them. And it's like, but if you really got to it, maybe you don't speak the same language, but we all have a basic understanding on a basic level of connection, being seen, being understood, being heard, being loved and loving. So that's where the non-dual aspect comes in, is like we remember that we are similar. And then when it comes to a sense of like divinity, we remember that like we're part of this divine creation. We're not separate from it. We're not separate from nature. We are nature. We're a part of it. We've become separate. And we see it as like, oh, but that's different from me. And I think, and when I talk about duality, it's more of this idea of night and day. They have to exist together. At the very peak of night, when it is the darkest it's going to be, it starts getting a little lighter. And at the very peak of brightness, it starts to get a little dim. So one cannot exist without the other. So really they're different, but they are in a coexistence, like almost like a marriage. So yeah, so it's an illusion, this illusion of separateness, of difference, of contrast. It's just to have we have these concepts and these words and this idea so that we can look at something and see the other and the comparison. But really, it's all same, but different.
Wow.
I know this is like getting very philosophical. I feel like we're going into another direction here. It's getting very like philosophy.
But it's always that's what really interests me about yoga. What you just told me, it's like mind opening. Do you say that? No, like I don't know how to say it.
The yogis, ancient yogis were sitting and meditating for hours. They were doing these practices and meditating so that they could see that they were the same as God existence. And in the tantric concept, you don't have to wait until you die to reach this level of bliss or ultimate, ecstasy. You can have that in your very real life. In the human life, you can reach moments of bliss, moments where you are overwhelmed with every emotion you can imagine, right? These mystical experiences where you're almost taken. And that's where you start to see, okay, I'm not separate. I'm part of this miracle that happens every single day. I have no idea when this tree got here or how it got here. I have no idea how the waves move. And like, I know like, yeah, there's like the current and like all of these things, but like, it's still a miracle. There's this body of water rushing at me. I can't create that, but it's created. It's just happening. How animals know how to fly to certain places and nobody needs to tell them. Nobody needs to tell this flower when it's time for it to open. It just does. These are all the miracles of the existence, right, of the earth, of this planet, but we're also part of that. So when we get these glimpses, those are the moments that we're like, okay, this is what the yogis were talking about. We have to remember that we have access to that. We have to remember that we're part of that. So the meditation practices or the yoga practices, or whether it's working with medicine, is to remember. Oh, I remember. That's what I'm part of this. But in the existence I live, I keep getting this illusion that I'm separate from it. And then we do something, and maybe in the end of yoga practice at Shavasana, you have a moment where you're like, I'm part of everything, and everything is inside of me. And then you leave the class and you go back to your life, and you're in traffic, and you have to pay your taxes, and life goes on, right?
Yeah. My dad always said that if you take it to remember, it's medicine. If you do it to remember, then it's medicine.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're just remembering, because in our deep core, in our essence, we know we have all the answers. We just need to remember them. Do you have the time, Lucas?
I do. 14:30.
I have to go. I have to go to Lisbon.
Well, it's been very nice talking to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate this. This was really cool.
Yeah, it was. I feel like really connected right now.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to get to just
It was a great talk.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I learned a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm really happy about this interview, how it has gone. It was my first interview, and really glad this is it. See you next time.